So this morning we are joined in studio by a gentleman who is challenging Nancy Pelosi in the Democratic primary for Congress, also former chief of staff to AOC, Shoykat Chakrabarti. Great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
Good to see you, man.
Welcome. Glad to have you in town. I wanted to start with, I know you were at the No Kings protest in San Francisco.
Yeah.
We've got, you guys can put some of these images up on the screen from around the country. I know the estimates were in the many millions for these actions across the country. In my little town in King George County, they even had like pretty decent number of people, which is something I've like never seen before. Just talk about your experience in San Francisco and what your interactions were like with the people who came out for it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and it was energizing. It was like electrifying. It was about 50,000 people in San Francisco that showed up, way bigger than the last one because I went to the last one as well. And people, I mean, it's just like gives you some hope. I think that was the overall sort of vibe I'd say I got there. And and it was, peaceful. Like there was nothing even bordering on violence, right?
No Antifa attacks.
No Antifa attacks, nothing going on. And the thing I think is really important about something like this is it is also building infrastructure to actually get people out on the streets, right? So the fact that you can keep doing this, repeat this, I think we're going to have some real infrastructure to get folks out on the streets and to have some sort of real opposition when we need that.
Well, that's kind of my question to you because, I grew up around the Tea Party age, coming of age in politics. Yeah. And what I saw was not only the marches, but there was a political infrastructure. And with respect, I don't see that same level. Candidates like you at this point in the in that cycle, let's say in the 2010 race, they had major money behind them to challenge incumbents. I'm sure you're studying some of those runs. So explain that disconnect to me. Why is it that millions can take to the streets, but there doesn't seem to be a centralized, organized force, people standing up and saying, I'm done with the Democratic establishment? Or are they saying it and I'm mistaken? What do you think?
So there isn't the same, I'd say, kind of like moneyed infrastructure that the Tea Party had. But I do think this is one of the big divides between candidates like myself, like Kat Abu-Ghazaleh, like the newer folks who are running, and the old guard, right? I think candidates like us, we are part of that. And we see our roles as not just trying to go in to be politicians and legislators. Like we actually need to be organizers and be part of this sort of these protests on the street and actually be organizing civil society to create a real opposition party. So I agree, I think what the Tea Party did was an example of how that actually happened on the other side.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the things that I have noted for a while now is different among the Democratic base in Trump 2.0 is that they really are frustrated with their leadership.
Yeah.
Pelosi no longer, the leader in the House, Hakeem Jeffries, who, Pelosi, at least she had some Machiavellian instincts. Jeffries is just completely seems weak. Schumer has been pathetic as well. And so when I see those images, you see the same level or even heightened level of dissatisfaction, anger from the base at what the Trump administration is doing, and a leadership that they feel increasingly has let them down. That's very different from the first Trump administration where they felt like, Nancy Pelosi and Schiff and others were like fighting for them and they were all aligned. I do think that creates an opening, not just for candidates like you, but for, more of a sort of Sanders left populist ideology, because those are the people that actually are being caught fighting. Like those are the people who've been leading the charge. And so if you have a base who's disgusted with the lack of fight, and you see that the fighters are people who, tend to share our ideology, I think that does create an opening, not to mention the fact that the previous liberal direction of let's not rock the boat and let's just try to return to the status quo has obviously completely failed.
Yeah, I think it's twofold, right? One thing is when Trump won the first time, I think a lot of people, especially mainstream Democrats, thought that was just a fluke. And Trump getting elected again has gotten a big part of the party and the base to just think about this as like, what is actually going on? Like, this is a real failure of the Democratic establishment.
Yeah.
And so I think there's two things that's going on where they're seeing the current Democratic Party being completely unable to do anything about what's going on in the moment with what I think is an authoritarian coup. And so they're looking for, leaders who are actually going to take this moment seriously. They're not, they don't want the sort of lay back and play dead politics. Let the backlash build and we're just going to win on in the next election off that backlash, because that might not happen, right? But the other piece is people really are thirsty for an actual vision to fix the deep economic problems that led to someone like Trump. Like that's something I had to explain the first Trump term when I was working with AOC. I had to try to explain, Trump was a result of these larger problems.
Yeah.
I don't find that I have to explain that anymore. Everyone gets it, right? So now we're at a place where I just get to pitch what's our version of the vision for actually how to fix this? Because MAGA's not doing it, right? MAGA's not going to fix it.
Well, my question though on San Francisco is, let's be real, like Nancy Pelosi is still tremendously popular, right? Among a lot of Democrats. I saw a recent unfavorable rating, like 33%. That was like total, but in your district, she has constantly never really had to take any of these primary challenges seriously. So I guess my question is, how do you seek to why is this time different? I mean, I've been doing the show with Krystal for years now. I've probably interviewed every primary challenger that has come to Nancy Pelosi. I'm still here interviewing another Nancy Pelosi challenger. Why is this time different?
Yeah, so the bet with this race was that there's this deep dissatisfaction with the Democratic establishment, right? Not necessarily Nancy Pelosi herself, but that people are really ready for change. And we actually ran a poll last month that showed a couple interesting things. Still shows Nancy Pelosi is generally well-liked. People actually respect her and like her. But when you ask Pelosi supporters, would they be willing to vote for somebody new, about 51% say yes, right? Okay. When you ask, and overall in the population, it's about 2/3 of the population. And then when you actually poll her against me, first, one thing we learned is I've already cut the lead in half. I was down 25, now I'm down 13. And when we actually show a positive bio of her and a bio of myself, we end up winning the race by 6. So people in the district are really, basically they're at this place where like, we like her, we think she was great for a certain time, but clearly we need something new, right? And so the point is to just get across the fact that I'm actually a serious candidate. I've got real experience in politics. And also everything I'm running on is overwhelmingly popular, not just in San Francisco, but across the country. I'm running on things to actually fix our economic problems. I'm running on anti-corruption. And that's really resonating with the district.
Is she for sure running again? She filed or?
She's filed with the FEC.
Okay.
Whenever people ask her, like, are you definitely running again? She always is mum about it. But, the rumors are maybe it's going to be her daughter that ends up being her pick. Who knows?
Doesn't she have 2 daughters?
Christine.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
Right. Famous in Washington.
I would love for you to talk a little bit while we have you about, you said, you need to offer people an alternative positive vision. I think you've been one of the people who has been at the forefront of actually really thinking deeply about what that vision would look like. So talk a little bit about how you see that.
Yeah, I think it's basically, like, to back up a bit, like, I think basically for decades now, wages have been stagnant for most Americans while the cost of essentials have really skyrocketed, right? And I think at the same time, our country's just been really stuck actually being able to do anything big. We can't take on big projects. We've deindustrialized the Midwest. I think one real example of how bad our state capacity is I think of EVs in China, right? Like EVs in China 10 years ago when they were starting to make them, we were being so smug about it. We were like, they're never going to catch up to us. Our technology is so great. And then literally last year, they are starting to make EVs that are better than ours. And we're just like, well, game's over. No way we can compete, right?
That's it. It feels a little bit like that, too, to be honest.
I know, right?
And that's kind of true at this point.
But it's such a failure of imagination, I think, on our part of what can we actually do as a country. So, part of what I'm running on is, I'd say, the things that people like Bernie or AOC and everybody runs on, which is we need structural fixes to things like healthcare, childcare, education, these big cost centers, right? We actually need universal healthcare, universal childcare. But the other piece that I've been really promoting, and this was really a lot of the Green New Deal work, is we actually need to have the government do a massive mobilization to kind of build up our industrial capacity and our state capacity to do stuff, to build industries, to build housing, to build all the stuff that we actually need in this country to survive.
Yeah.
And the examples we look at when we talk about this are, a lot of the rich nations that got rich in the 20th century. Because if you look at the history of the 20th century, basically every rich nation today, they went through these periods where they massively transformed their economy in really short periods of time. And the way they did it is they really governed in a way that's very different from us. They didn't just pass some policies. You had to actually have this movement that was organizing civil society to kind of be on this mission. And often that mission was to get rich as a nation. And sometimes the mission in our case, during World War II is to beat the fascists. Yeah. And you made real plans. You had institutions to finance and execute those plans. It's a whole different kind of governing. And that's really been a focus of a lot of my work.
Okay, but to press you a little bit, your part of the party that you've been involved with now for some time has not really had a good run in San Francisco, right? So San Francisco, Daniel Lurie beats London Breed in the mayoral race. You had Chesu Boudin who went down. It seems like the homelessness and the crime, which, look, no offense, like like was definitely associated with a lot of the politics that you've been involved with some past, was utterly rejected by a lot of those voters. So like, why should I believe your vision for governance when the very city which you probably had the most influence on, not you personally, but your brand of politics had the most influence on, basically became an emblem for a failed city in the United States?
Yeah, I really think that it's a backlash of government dysfunction. Because I agree. I think the San Francisco government has not actually managed to take care of the homeless people in our city and have them not have to live out on the streets, right? And I'm not sure Daniel Leary is necessarily going to fix that either. And we're going to see the same backlash. I think there's the same reason at a national level. You have someone like Barack Obama win on a message of change, and then when people feel like that didn't work out, you have someone like Donald Trump win. I think people are really quite open to what the change looks like, but people are really sure that whatever we're doing right now, that's not working.
Are you worried that Trump's abuse of government power, because in a certain way, he's kind of greasing the skids for what you're talking about. He's like, you know what, Congress, forget it. Judiciary, like, who cares? Who cares about laws? I'm just going to do what I want to do.
Right.
In a certain way, he creates space for, a more aggressive government policy. In another way, something Saagar and I have both been concerned about is like, it gives libertarians a bit of an argument of, hey, when you've got this unchecked government, it's kind of a problem. Are you worried about a backlash to his abuse of government, making it more difficult for, a vision such as yours that does require direct government action to be accepted by the people?
Yeah, I'm worried about that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm the kind of person, I don't generally believe that there's like one system that'll fix anything. Like the people do matter. And yeah, you can use a powerful government for good, and you can use it for bad, right? And I think FDR, in my opinion, was an example of how we had a powerful government that had lost state capacity and used it to improve people's lives. So, I think the job here is to try to distinguish that, to say that, the stuff that's going wrong right now, that's because Trump is throwing out Congress, which, by the way, I'm not saying we throw out Congress, right? Like FDR actually used to love going in front of Congress and defend his ideas, and that's how he felt he could build political support for it.
Not all the time, though.
Not always.
Not when they went against him, though. Okay.
Yeah, no, but he did actually. He did all the committee. He actually showed up in front of Congress,
That's
right?
True. Yeah, that's
true. And which Trump has never done. And so, I think it's more powerful if you actually bring civil society and the body politic along when you're doing this kind of big approach. Like, you can't actually just go it alone and have the government just do something, because you need to have buy-in.
You need national buy-in.
Yeah.
I apologize for getting so specific, but like that is part of your job. You're going to be representing. So like I think about that mall in San Francisco. What is it? The Westfield Mall. I bought I bought one of my ties there. It's empty now, right?
Yeah.
It's because of crime. It's because of homelessness. I read an article recently in the Wall Street Journal. It's a multi-billion-dollar boondoggle. They won't pay the mortgage. Like, what are you going to do about that? At the end, that was a great place, and now it got ruined. It got ruined by, again, a lot of that governance, and I'm just not hearing, quite a bit about that.
Look, I'm not going to downplay the issues around homelessness and crime. That mall specifically, though, I do think there's been some misinformation around it, because malls are not doing well all around the country.
That's true.
And we've got some, the Japantown Mall, Stonestown Gallery in San Francisco, they're doing great. And they've managed to pivot to figure out a model that actually works. I get the feeling that Westfield just didn't. They had this old mall style, and they're in the middle of downtown where there's all this other retail. So yeah, I think crime and homelessness had something to do with it, but I don't think that's the whole story with Westfield.
Okay, all right. I mean, I'll take your word for it. I just think it's more of like if there's a reason why people point to it as a failed, not just the mall, but like retail, Market Street and everything. I remember visiting here. I said, I can't believe what happened to this place. And so that's why I'm just honestly a bit skeptical. Like, I hear big things about Green New Deal, et cetera. Sure, it sounds great. But, if that's actually how the governance itself of the city is, having visited, I mean, one of the critiques you've had, I know, is around oligarchy. Like, you're going to be representing probably one of the most per capita cities with billionaires. What's your plan to deal with that? There's going to be a lot of, paper millionaires who are in that district who really like some of the more status quo. Is it going to be voters? Is it going to be them? Because I've seen a lot of them being prioritized by San Francisco politicians.
Yeah, we can't. I mean, there are a lot of them, but they're still a small fraction of the actual city, right? And if you look at people in San Francisco, if you ask them about this question of oligarchy, especially tech workers, actually, because I talked to a lot of tech workers, they hate it. Tech workers are really embarrassed by being kind of represented by people like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and David Sachs. And they kind of are the first to be like, we need to show that we are not them, right? And so in San Francisco, though, when you talk about these failed policies, I think actually the failed policies is a result of the lack of state capacity on San Francisco's level. You know, the fact that San Francisco doesn't actually build, you know, and part of my politics here is, and this doesn't always line up with progressives, but I do think red tape and you
so
know,
you're a
high
YIMBY
construction costs. I'm both. You know, I think the thing that the YIMBYs, I think, get right is, yes, we do actually need to make it faster and easier and cheaper to construct. But the thing I think they get wrong is that's not going to be all we need to actually get stuff built. You know, we actually need public financing, social housing, all these other tools to make sure we get the stuff built.
Yeah. You're yes and on abundance.
I'm a yes and guy.
Yes. Let's talk a little bit about, because Saagar brings up the, you know, tech-heavy district that you would represent. I mean, what are your thoughts on the development of AI, the likely, you know, mass displacement of workers, the way that would upend the social contract? You know, right now they're all in what I would consider basically a race to the bottom to speed who can get, you know, their AI to AGI fastest without any regard for what the consequences to society would be.
Right.
You know, I know you're a deep thinker on all these things. So what are your thoughts there on what we should do?
Oh man, I mean, I think it's so lame that right now AI is going to a place where we're just going to have like a slop TikTok full of AI porn is, I guess, like the monetization strategy. Yeah. I mean, it is just like we've created a speculative bubble where we're letting the markets decide where the stuff goes, and it's going to create complete dystopia. But I think of the AI question as kind of downstream from the fact that we don't have any capacity at a national level to do any sort of planning of where our economy goes, right? And where some big disruptive technology like this, how it should be used. Because it could be the case that when you have a very productive technology, the benefits of that is spread across more of society. It's not just accumulating to Sam Altman. And there's one version of this where I equated to kind of automation of the car manufacturing sector. So when that started happening, when car manufacturing started getting really automated in Germany, they have labor and corporations and government that all sit on the boards of their car manufacturers, right? And they do some planning. They're like, this is how we're going to do automation in our car manufacturing. And the result of that, and this has sort of changed because EVs have really changed the game, but initially the result of that was German workers ended up making twice as much in wages as their American counterparts. They also made more cars per capita than in American car manufacturing, and they had more automation than America, right? So I think that's the way we should be treating AI. We need to actually have society have a say on how we're using this technology so it doesn't just turn into, you know, slop news feeds.
You mentioned tech workers. Where do you stand on the H-1B question? So you'd be representing a district with a lot of H-1Bs. You talked about tech workers. A lot of those people have come to me and said we're being abused by H-1B workers. What do you think about the issue?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the camp of we definitely need reform. Like, I do think we need to, I think we should detach H-1B from employer, like employees from employers, because I think it's a very exploitative system. And I think we need to have higher, basically prevailing wage requirements on the visa so that it has an upward push on wages. So the result of bringing it, you know, so you really are bringing in H-1B workers that you can't hire locally, and it's pushing everyone's wages up, so it's net benefit.
But do you think these companies have been abusing the H-1B system? A lot of them would be in your district.
Yeah, absolutely, they've been abusing it, yes.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to talk about the disconnect between where the base of the Democratic Party has been and where Democratic Party leadership has been on Israel in particular. If we can put F2 up on the screen. This was an interesting set of polls that was, I think, leaked, actually, that this is from Democrats in a variety of swing districts. So that was the, you know, the sample that was taken here. And they asked people for favorable or unfavorable views on the variety of things. So unfavorable for Israel is 50%. Favorable is only 27%. Palestine, completely opposite, 60% favorable, only 13% unfavorable. Netanyahu has a 6% approval rating. AIPAC has a 16% approval rating. The Israel lobby in general, 14. The UN, 73 positive, and Doctors Without Borders, 82. Can put the next one up on the screen as well. I just some other numbers to chew on with regard to this topic. In your own words, please describe your impressions of Israel. They ask here, 59% offer something that is negative. The number one response there was they're committing a genocide. On the positive side, they're kind of mixed. The number one is support the people, not so much the government. Number two is Israel has a right to exist, and then you've got some 12% that are more or less neutral to you know their views here. Let's put the next one up on the screen as well. When thinking about the current crisis in the Middle East, you mostly have sympathy for Palestinians, equal sympathy for Palestinians and Israelis, or mostly have sympathy for the Israelis. 5% of the Democratic base say they mostly have sympathy for the Israelis, and yet their leadership overwhelmingly mostly has sympathy for the Israelis. You know, does does this feel to you like an important like litmus test issue for Democratic base voters? Because of course, if you poll, it's not the #1 issue that most people say. Yet it seems like it's such a moral abomination and such a failure, a moral failure on the part of Democratic leadership who likes to posture like they care about human rights and they care about international law, that to me it seems that it has become an important kind of dividing line issue in Democratic primaries in particular.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's become a proxy for the larger question of who do you serve, right? Are you actually representing people or are you representing money?
Yeah.
Because there's no explanation for why you would continue voting to send unconditional military funding to Israel when your voters are telling you they don't want it, when you see the horrible genocide that Israel's committing with that money, when it's against our own law. The Leahy law says we shouldn't be doing this, other than money, right? That's the only answer. And, I actually think you see this on a whole host of issues. There's a big divide between where voters are at on things like congressional stock trading ban, right? Or banning the revolving door between Congress and the lobbying industry on big money, and where politicians are at. And, that's honestly, it's a big political opportunity in some cases for people like me who are actually just running on these issues that are very popular. We get painted as progressives, which I call myself a progressive, but it's really just popular issues.
Yeah.
So what did you think of your old boss's decision to vote for defensive weapons to Israel? Is that a vote that you would take?
I wouldn't have voted the same way as her, no. But I think if you look at, she did the same vote as Bernie. They've been voting that way for a long time, and ultimately she didn't actually vote on the bill.
Sure.
So no real money got sent to Israel there.
Yeah, but the logic of it. So you're saying no more aid to. What's your litmus
my
test?
logic on it is any money we're sending to Israel right now, like I don't think they're being so careful about this is only going to defense, this is only going to offense. Right. Any money we give to support their defensive capabilities, that's more money they have for their offensive capabilities. And those offensive capabilities are being used for abhorrent actions right now.
Last question for you. You did serve as AOC's chief of staff. She's talked about both as a potential primary challenger to Chuck Schumer, which frankly I think she would win in a landslide if he even decided to run again. And she's also talked about as a potential presidential contender. Do you think she could be an effective presidential contender? Do you think that she would have an ability to lead the country in that way?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think she is a generational talent, and I think she's incredible at communicating. I think the thing she's got is twofold. One, she actually cares, which is rare in politicians. And she is able to explain things and do the kind of politics that I think is necessary for this moment. Like if we want to do big stuff, if we want to actually get the country to be able to do these big structural changes, fix healthcare, get industrialization happening again, you actually need someone in the presidency who's able to communicate that and use that as a way to build political will to do those big things. You're not going to be able to do it through a regular establishment Democrat who's just poll testing everything and figuring out what to say, at the moment.
See, that's interesting because when you came in, I remember when you became chief of staff because you were a shit stirrer in Congress, which I liked. I loved it. That's part of the reason I've always respected you. But the critique I've seen from a lot of progressives has been that after you left, I forget your other colleague's name, after the two of you guys.
Corbin Trent.
That's right. After the two of you guys left, it's like, now we're starting to play the Pelosi game. We're starting to go for the oversight committee, even though we're still not going to get it. Start to play ball with leadership. We're not doing sit-ins anymore. So what do you think went wrong, or if anything went wrong?
I don't think anything went wrong. I mean, I left, I left sort of in a planned way. Like I came in, I did the shit stirring to get the Green New Deal launched, got her office hired, I had a kid on the way, and I got out. And, I think she needs support, right? Like that's the other piece of this is if someone like AOC does become president, she actually wants to do this big thing. That's really what it comes down to. Because it's not just about winning this presidency, we actually have to deliver at the end of the day, or it is going to go back to some sort of authoritarianism. Yeah. But she's going to need a Congress to back her up. And that's like a big part of my focus right now is I am trying to recruit people to run all across the country. I'm talking to people who are popping up primarying Democrats. We're going to need a movement to replace a whole bunch of these Democrats to completely change the party. And in that sort of environment, I think she can be very successful.
Okay. All right,
Shoykot, tell people where they can support your campaign if they're so inclined.
Yeah, go to my website. It's shoykot.us, SAIKAT.us. I mentioned in that poll that if all we do is get everyone to hear about this campaign in the district, we're going to win. So we're doing a huge volunteer run operation. So if you live in the Bay Area, you can come out to canvass. We've been canvassing every weekend. We get like 50 to 60 people every day on Saturday and Sunday.
That's incredible.
But if you're outside of the district, we're doing phone banks from anywhere in the country. So please sign up to volunteer on our website, or send a few bucks our way if that works.
Right. Well, I'll be looking at your campaign with interest, sir. So we'll see you later.
Thank you, Shoykot.
Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.